Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, study of truth, and it's opposite of mythology, which is a science of fake, lie, or imagination. And it is purely based on Sanskrit root words. Means fake, lie, imagination, and sat means truth. Today we're going to talk about the strategic military compatibility of Indian and American forces or the Western forces, and also the India's look east policy. These are the two questions asked by most of you. So without delay, let us welcome my very good friend and also a very famous analyst, Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
Vetrivel, thanks for having me on.
Abhijit, this is your strength area, which today we are discussing. I think it's a very easy, like it's like on the back of your mind kind of topics.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So the West and Indian forces, do you think they're militarily aligned in terms of capabilities and operations?
Uh, no. Fundamentally, you look at a first world pairing with a third world country. You will have certain areas where you can work together, and there will be certain areas where you simply can't work together. For example, in most third world militaries, what will happen is technology is used as a tool for control. Whereas in most Western militaries, technology is used as a tool of enabling, right? Uh, the training is significantly higher. The amount of power delegation is much greater. The amount of time spent on education is much more, which is why you can delegate a lot more power. In India, we generally see that it's used as a sort of uh, tool not to enable soldiers, but to control them better. So this is purely from a philosophical point of view. But then there's issues with how the Western countries think about defense and how India thinks about defense. There's a question of interoperability of equipment and things like that. Now, basic things like guns, basic communications can happen, but the sophisticated data sharing and things like that, we've spoken about this before, different ball game. So it's limited compatibility at best, very limited. Uh, you will end up seeing quite a few, if God forbid, if we come to a situation where we're fighting a war together, you will end up seeing a lot of blue on blue and miscommunications and things like that.
The Indian soldiers are known for discipline worldwide, and the World War One, World War Two has seen British victories due to Indian soldiers. In American soldiers, with American soldiers, Americans never fought a war in World War Two in the Asia much. I mean, they were in the Philippines and other areas, but not generally in the South Asia area. And also, they did not fight in North Africa. So the discipline system in the U.S. armies is literally the same. I mean, there's a court martials. You cannot leave your post. You
No,
cannot
no,
all
no.
those.
Look, discipline's a different thing. I first they did fight in North Africa, and the Asian sector was entirely the Americans winning it, right? So they literally in every single place it was the American intervention, be it in Europe, be it in North Africa, be it in Japan, that they won. Now with America, when we talk about discipline is a completely different issue. Okay, discipline. This has nothing to do with discipline. This has to do with the powers delegated to a soldier. Now, because you have much better ways of identifying friend from foe, electronic ways and things like that, uh, American defense philosophy is you are given general guidelines and it's left up to the soldier or the pilot or the captain or whatever to enforce it. So they generally get a lot more freedom of action. It has nothing to do with discipline. It's just different philosophies.
When it comes to the military hardware, the compatibility, like when we talk about Quad, and India is sending 4 warships to South China Sea, And Americans are generally very happy about it. Generally, I have seen good news about good reviews on that India is taking its own step. But India also made it very clear that they are doing it as per their priorities, not as per American priorities or the Quad priorities. It's an independent Indian mission. So, what do you think it gives a message to the whole world?
Again, see, this is the kind of confused messaging. I mean, why do you even have to message it and say it's for our own interests and all of that, right? Or why do you have to be scared about saying it? Because the Chinese are sending ships into your backyard every single day. Why are you so uh, uh, hesitant to send it on your own mission into their backyard, number one? And then you take the step after what, 6 7 8 years, and then you send ships, and then you want it celebrated. Well, it's a good start, but it really tells you about the slowness of policymaking in this country, and just the ambiguity. uh, Too long to decide and things like that.
So, what is the strategic objectives according to you for the Indian Navy or the Indian government in the South China Sea sending this ship? What are they trying to achieve there?
It's basically flying a flag and putting the Chinese on notice, saying, look, you can send your ships here, but please don't think that you're going to go unchallenged there, right? So it's finally, after so long, after taking slap after slap after slap and pretending it didn't happen, it's doing the reverse now to China.
The four warships that are being sent to South China Sea, I have been given reports that they are extremely powerful ships, even by the Western standards. So even the U.S. Navy, one of my friends, he told me that it is a huge power. Generally, the U.S. Navy thinks about Indian warships as overloaded with weapons, and that's what many of my friends have told me in the U.S. Navy, and they say that Indian warships are one of the most heavily armed warships in each and every warship. So, do
I
you
don't
think?
think that's entirely accurate, because on average, an Indian warship, um, of roughly equal tonnage would carry about one third to half the number of weapons that a American destroyer would carry, or a South Korean King Sejong class destroyer would carry, and definitely less than some of the top line Japanese destroyers. So not accurate at all. The only thing that we carry a lot more than Western navies is we carry double the number of anti-ship missiles, right? So in the West, they carry about 8 anti-ship missiles. We usually carry about 16 anti-ship missiles, though in the latest class of ship, that's also come down to uh, 8 or 10, I forget now. And to put this in context, just one new generation Chinese ship, similar to the Aegis class, I think it's the Type 52 or the 55, I forget now, has more missiles and firepower on it than just one, has more firepower than our entire Western fleet does. Sorry, our Eastern fleet does. It literally has more missile tubes than our Eastern fleet. That should tell you a lot, right? So, not true. And the other thing is that it's also uh, balanced out in that Chinese ships in general would have a lower quality of electronics on them as opposed to Indian ships. But the issue with the Indian ships is that when you multi-source electronics, can you make them all function properly together? Big question mark. Big question mark. So let's see.
Uh, See, generally, American destroyers are 9,000 tons generally, and Indian destroyers are 6,000 to 6,700 tons, which is 3,000 tonnage difference. Obviously,
Yeah.
but the per square
But,
feet of the ship.
but even per square feet, if you look at it, you carry about 32 vertical launch tubes. The American Aegis class has what, 122, 126 launch tubes. There's still almost about 3 4 times your size in terms of weapons load.
And the Chinese ships are generally in the same class as Indian ships, even though their new one
Uh,
is
well,
8,000.
the new destroyers are about 9,000 tons,
The,
and they've got as much or more. I forget now, as much as the Americans do effectively.
yeah,
So
but
they're actually much more heavily armed.
so do you think India will also, when you talk about look east policy, will India, because the trade is a major contributor from that South China Sea for India, $200 billion flows in or trades over there. So do you think that India will restore or help Vietnam, Philippines, all these navies with the support if there is a need over there?
No. The only thing you can count on India to do is to not count on India. Basically, you count on India to not be countable. Never depend on India. India will let you down.
Now, coming to the Malacca Straits, which is a major shipping transit point for Chinese ships between the two islands, I think two Indian islands. Do you think that there has been enough fortification made to protect the shipping Indian shipping lanes and also dissuade Chinese from blocking Indian ships in South China Sea?
Well, look, with the Malacca, it's not really Indian territory, but what we do retain the ability to do is to block shipping out there. So it's not a case of the Chinese blocking shipping. It's more a case of India blocking shipping because most of China's energy comes through the Malacca Straits, right? So it's more a case of India we don't have a defensive posture out there. We have an offensive posture out there, which is the ability to wreck Chinese shipping when it comes through the Malacca.
Recently, when an American ship entered Lakshadweep territorial waters of India, India was surprised, shocked. Do you think? Do you think that? And most of the people are asking this question right now. Is that? Do you think that the uh, American Navy did a an action which shocked India, or India may take precautionary measures in the future for such violation of India's territorial rights?
What America did, India wasn't shocked. What America's did sailing that destroyer through the Lakshadweep. It's done before as well. It's in fact done it every single year except I think in 2018 and 2020. 2020 was because of COVID. 2018, I don't know what happened, but those were the only 2 years. But for the last 10 years, they've sailed through every year. The difference was that when it sailed through Maldives, South Korea, India, it always shut up about it. A note was sent to India saying, "We're going to sail through your waters, guys. Hey." This time, it was just unnecessarily provocative. I mean, we're not throwing a tantrum. We're saying, you want to sail through, sail through. For us, our territorial waters are defined by more of a denial of them to China than to anybody else. We don't give a damn who else sails through it. But if the Chinese are going to sail through it, then Indian ships require equivalent freedoms through Chinese waters, right? Or through the South China Sea, pretty much, which is not granted. So it's very much a reciprocal relationship. So America did something particularly stupid, which was essentially buttress the Chinese argument and take on a friend where you had no need to do so. It was diplomatic clumsiness on America's part. But it didn't shock the Indians at all. We've kept quiet about it for the last 10 years. Why are we going to suddenly throw a tantrum about it? We let all other ships pass through unless you're Chinese.
So a lot of news is floating around on the internet on the INS Vikrant, the new ship India launched and for testing. So, do you think that the INS Vikrant has flaws? Like this is what people are talking about, but I do not
No.
know. I'm
Look,
not part of it.
there's two things that have to be flagged, but they're not big issues, right? One is corrosion, because there was lots of corrosion visible on a brand new ship. A brand new ship should not have that kind of corrosion, right? Over a point of time, it's fine, but I suspect, uh, I hope it's surface corrosion. If it's deeper corrosion, then uh, you know, uh, because the issue here is it's been under construction for 12 years. We've taken 12 years to build this. So it's very worrying to see that corrosion and what kind of steps were taken when it was in dry dock to keep it corrosion free. It's a question mark. It's a concern, but it's not a certainty. Number one. Number two is the size of the lifts, because essentially the Russians were advising you on the project and they locked you into the MiG 29. So you can only do a MiG 29 or a Tejas. You can't do any other aircraft on it. So you're kind of you've excluded the possibility of any Western fighters there, which just reduces your your freedom of operations essentially. The rest of it is brilliant because for an aircraft carrier that size, what 35 to 45,000 tons, absolutely full load is 45,000 tons. For it to have so much deck space, for it to have so much landing and parking space and takeoff space and all of that is nothing short of spectacular. So it's actually an incredibly good design. The island, which controls all the operations, is extremely compact, well decked out. The self defense equipment is excellent. So it's actually a very, very well thought out ship. One or two problems here or there. I mean, corrosion, I have questions on it because I want to see how it reflects on the inside. The rest of it is fine.
I again quote my one of my friends, because I have a lot of friends. I live in a Navy town, US Navy town, so I have a lot of friends here. So one of the so they are also studying, like their design departments, they study a lot every ship that is launched in any foreign military. And one of the things that they said was that INS Vikrant has given 100,000 square feet of space on the deck, which is, you're absolutely right, that is a remarkable thing, because that is roughly around 50,000 square feet space less than USS Abraham Lincoln or any of the large USS Nimitz also, because these ships are regularly parked in where I live. I see them every day. So an Indian ship is almost 75 meters shorter than American nuclear carrier, 75 meters shorter. And generally, so the
No, it's not. It's not 75 meters. I think it's what 262 or 232 meters. Let me just quickly check that, because it's definitely not that that much smaller. Not definitely not 75 meters for sure.
yeah,
It's
generally American
262 meters, and and a US aircraft carrier is 330 meters. Yeah, you're right. 75. 75. Yeah,
yes.
75 meters shorter. But it's a huge amount of deck space.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As compared to the American carrier, they are surprised that how much deck space they have created in a shorter ship. And generally, American ships are 100,000 ton dead weight DWT, mostly
Yeah, around
100,000
about.
perhaps.
Yeah,
India.
100,000.
So in the 40% of the 40% of the tonnage, and as compared to American ship, they have got a more. So if you look at the tonnage versus the deck space, you are absolutely right that India has done a remarkable job. The
Yeah.
next thing which comes into play is the third aircraft carrier of India. Do you think that will be nuclear, or it will be the same? Because so there are advantages, disadvantages also, because UK
There's
has not.
lots of advantages and disadvantages. I think the thing is, for a Russian reactor, which is mostly what we would use, you would have to use dedicated. On the other hand, if you use a French reactor, French reactors get the same civilian fuel. Uh, uh, we, the military and the civil reactors use very similar fuel, same processes and things like that. So there's different cost benefit analyses to it. Generally, the big advantage that you get with a nuclear carrier is you can pretty much you're limited only by human beings, how much they need to be fed and how much fatigue they have. Otherwise, you can pretty much be out at sea for like 10, 12 more years, I think, if you want, without ever having to refuel and things like that. On the other hand, it's very expensive to maintain. technically, because you need to have a whole nuclear fuel, military nuclear fuel infrastructure for it, which we're committed to as per the India-US nuclear deal anyway. So irrespective of if we do the French path or the Russian path, it's still going to be a very expensive proposition. The main thing, however, is the catapult. So in this version, the Vikrant, we have a ski jump. Now, ski jumps aren't entirely the best. They don't make the best use of aircraft. They only marginally help them. On the other hand, a steam catapult would help them much more significantly. You're able to take off with much greater weights and things like that. I think the second aircraft carrier, they wanted to build it around a catapult. They're looking at the EMALS, the electronic catapult that replaces the steam catapult, but I don't know where that is at the moment. I don't know where that project or program is at the moment. Let's see.
So, of all the three forces of India, principal like the army, navy, and air force, U.S. Indian Navy has done the maximum indigenization in terms of even they go in for selecting a lesser caliber gun, 74 millimeter over 120 millimeter their requirements. So, do you think that that is their model is more suited to the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which we talk
Yeah.
about?
Well, the 76 guns are imported from Italy, the Otto Melara, but they're more to do with uh, they're more to do with uh, realistic plans. They know what they can indigenize and what they can't indigenize, so they're more realistic with their planning than uh, these chaps are, than the other two forces are. The joke is that basically you have the army which would essentially want its tanks to fly, and the air force which would effectively want its planes to swim underwater.
So one of the Indian Navy has made the maximum mark in the international arena when anyone respects. Obviously, Indian ground forces as well as Indian Navy has earned the maximum respect in foreign countries.
I
I've
wouldn't
seen.
say it's respect. I think it's more the case that the Navy actually travels abroad a lot more. So if you look at the Air Force, they'll go abroad for exercises every now and then, as will the Army. But the Navy keeps visiting ports almost every week, month, whatever. Right? They'd be doing goodwill visits and things like that. So the Navy travels more. It's always, all navies in general have always had a more international outlook.
I remember visiting one of the Indian ships, Indian destroyers in San Diego. It was parked here, and I was invited to see the ship. I've never seen the warship before. Even American ship, I've not seen much inside. And then on the side by side, as a mark of respect for Indian Navy, Americans parked their Berkeley destroyers, Ash Berkeley destroyers, as a mark of respect. And normally they never do that for any ship. I've seen so many ships coming to, I've seen Japanese ships, they don't do that. But for Indian Navy ship, they did that. Do you think it's a sign or
I
symbol?
wouldn't know. I wouldn't know because I don't know the minutiae of procedure, but I really wouldn't know about that.
They park next to each other. And I can tell
But
you
that's
one
very
thing.
common. Parking next to each other is very common. Like I've seen that very often. Like I've seen that in France. When we went to Toulon Harbor, there was an American warship parked next to a French destroyer. You see it at all these international, naval displays and things. So if it's just a case of parking, it's no big deal. They park next to each other all the time.
No, but
I've
in
seen it personally in Bahrain as well.
other countries, I do not know. But in US in last 10 years, only once Indian ship has visited in San Diego, one destroyer. And never they park their carrier or destroyer near any foreign ship. But with India, I mean, it was a different kind of environment. So do you think that is because of the Indian Ocean?
I don't know, but I would have. It would purely be a question of birthing issues, right? So it's it's just a question of birthing ports and things like that. It won't be anything particularly uh, uh, significant in terms of its meaningfulness or all of that.
So in the latest the Gogra hot springs area in Chinese and India have actually done a disengagement. That's what they're trying to do. Depsang, they are already occupying, I was told by somebody, 2,000 square kilometers in Depsang area. Do you think Chinese or India will come to an agreement in that area at least? Because Indian army is also
They've
threatened.
already come to an agreement as of yesterday across the board. They've come to an agreement. It's a bit of a stupid agreement because they're not occupying territory. I don't know when people say occupying territory what they mean, because technically China has been occupying our territory since 1959, 56, 59. But if you're talking since 2013, there's been no further intrusion into Indian territory since 2013. Well, the lines haven't changed since 2013. Let's put it that way. Number one. Number two, the negotiations were going really well till the last minute. Because the deal was the Chinese wanted us to stop infrastructure building on our side, on undisputed Indian territory. And we said no, because if you build infrastructure, we're going to build infrastructure. This is not negotiable. The problem was we didn't build too much by way of forward infrastructure. Well, the Chinese went on building forward infrastructure. And now that we've agreed to the disengagement, we've also agreed that all infrastructure there will be considered permanent, which means the Chinese have a significant advantage over you in terms of forward infrastructure, which is a particularly stupid thing to do on India's part, but we did anyway. It's a pattern, it's a repeat pattern. This happened in Doklam and in that salient, the Sikkim salient. It happened there as well. So there's nothing much you can do. It is what it is.
So India wins the wars but loses at the negotiating table. That is, we have
Yes.
seen again and again. So
Yes.
is this the same case? Yeah, we're again losing on the negotiation table. We left
Yes.
Kailash Heights,
Well,
and now
look, to be fair, it's not a loss of territory. It's not a loss of what would you call it? Te- Territory or ceding of additional rights, but you have status quo'd a great imbalance in terms of forward infrastructure.
coming to coming to the European sector. We have seen that the Syria and other places and Afghanistan also towards India's west and America's east, we have not seen any Atlantic deployment of Indian Navy. Do you know what is the reason for that? Or what can
What
you
are we
think
going
of?
to do in the Atlantic, realistically? We have, I think they sailed, or was it the Pacific? We do visits to Britain and things like that. Britain and France, we visit. It's not like there haven't been deployments. We visit.
Atlantic means between US and Africa.
Yeah, we do visit. We visited a few African countries, Britain and France, quite regularly. So yeah, we do visit. So we technically sail through. So, but do we conduct exercises in the Atlantic? Obviously not. It's not an environment we're interested in, because we're not exactly going to fight. Go shell the Bahamas or invade Cuba or try to annex the Azores or something like that.
So does the Diego Garcia Indian Ocean, according to you, poses a threat to India, or it's an ally for India? Because Diego Garcia is a huge military base, British military base, operated by
An American
Americans.
military base that was a British military base. It's leased out to the Americans. The base is American, though technically belongs to Britain, even though it technically belongs to Mauritius, either Mauritius or Seychelles. I forget one of those two countries.
Seychelles, yeah.
And it's meant to be. There's some kind of dispute about it, and I think international arbitration ruled that the natives weren't allowed to return there and things like that. Or they had to be paid compensation. Yeah, they had to be paid compensation, something like that. As long as America is a friend, it's perfectly okay having it there. When America turns, it becomes a threat. But I personally go to sleep quite happy that America has a base in Diego Garcia for a very simple reason that Chinese, they think 10 times before their main focus always remains Diego Garcia. They think 10 times before coming here because of Diego Garcia.
So India has bases in Mauritius, Seychelles. India has bases in Oman, and Indian South. India also has the base from Andaman and also South India. So like from 5 points, we cover that area very well, effectively. And
You do. The issue also, look, it's not about the number of bases, because the more bases you have, the more you're sort of dividing your forces. Number one. On the other hand, if you've only got a few bases, then you're concentrating them too much. The far too juicy a target. See, it's almost waiting for a tactical nuclear weapon to be used against it in a single shot decapitation strike kind of thing. Uh, the thing is the quality of the equipment at the bases. It's the quality of soldiers. It's a ship is useless without the sailor in it. All right, and a navy is useless without its sailors and its ships. So it's really the quality of human beings. See, human machines don't win wars. Human beings win wars. So it's entirely about the human capital out there and the equipment out there. So it's fine. I mean, generally, like I said in the first question that you asked me, we do have a significant. We have access to much better technology than the Chinese do. The question is how we use that technology and how we fuse that technology.
So one of the last questions. So a lot of reports are there that pirates have never attacked Chinese ships, and a
That's not
lot
true.
of. So there's a point that did Chinese fund the pirates also to attack other ships?
There have been a few Chinese ships that have been attacked. They have.
I I mean, Chinese are associated with everything rogue nowadays. So this is one more point which I had to ask you this question. So this session
And
was entirely the questions coming from
and
students.
that's of course why the Chinese set up their base in Djibouti. It's it's quite a fun base to look at. It's a bit weird. I didn't know what to make of that base. I couldn't even figure out what the purpose of that base was, because we were flying in from Addis Ababa and it was an unscheduled stop in Djibouti. And I'm looking at it going, it was meant to be Addis Ababa to Delhi flight. And for some reason, we were stranded on the ground for almost 5 hours in Djibouti. And we flew over it and we're like, what's the point of this? It seems to me more like a flag waving exercise, because I still don't know. I've not heard a convincing explanation of what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese themselves seem pretty confused, and other countries seem far too divided on what the Chinese are doing.
A lot of jokes on Chinese ships nowadays, and I will talk to you on some other point on some other time on those. Actually, a lot of
Look,
jokes there.
I'm very clear about two things. I'm not sailing in a Chinese ship, and I'm not flying in a Chinese plane. These are two things I'm bloody clear about, and I'm never buying a Chinese car. Unfortunately, with the phone, I can't do anything much, because the assholes at Apple have outsourced it to China. But the rest of it, I will not sit in a Chinese plane. I will not sit in a Chinese car, and I definitely won't sail in a Chinese ship. Huh?
I had only one experience in flying in a Chinese plane, Southwestern China Airlines, from LA to Shanghai and to Delhi.
No, I meant a Chinese-built plane.
Oh,
I've traveled on a lot of Chinese airlines, but I've only flown Airbus or Boeing. Never anything, never a native Chinese plane. That said, my only experience flying North Korean airlines, well, three experiences flying North Korean airlines were very pleasant. We went on an Antonov AN-26 from Pyongyang to Mount Pektu, and then back from Mount Pektu to Pyongyang the next day. And they were amazing planes. They had windows that were like so big. Like they even make the Dreamliner, the Boeing 787 windows look small. They are huge windows, number one. And number two, the leg room. It's like better than American domestic business class kind of leg room in economy, right? Wide, big seats. I mean, they're all metal and leather, no composites or plastic, but very comfortable. And then from Pyongyang to Beijing, I flew on a what was it? A Tupolev, a Tu-204, I think it was. Yeah, a Tu-204. Or that day they changed it to a Yak 40. I forget. Anyway, I forget what the plane was. So those I'll fly. Old Russian planes I'll fly. I will not fly a Chinese plane. There's this new C919 or something like that that's
That's
coming
right.
out. When I book my tickets, I will ensure I'm even within China. I will ensure I'm not taking a Chinese plane.
If they allow all the Indians to fly nowadays, they
No,
don't allow.
they allow Indians to fly. They allow Indians to fly. I flew from Beijing to Lhasa, and then took the train back from Lhasa because I wanted to see what the train journey is like. And the Lhasa train journey was fantastic, but the plane journey was very interesting because what happens is the weights and heights that you're operating at in Lhasa, which is like what, 12, something like that, about 10 to 12,000 feet high. It was an Airbus A330, right? A wide body airliner, huge airliner. And in spite of that, one third of the plane, the last segment of economy, had to be kept vacant during takeoff and landing. And everybody had to be moved in front during takeoff and landing. So there were significant weight restrictions even on wide body, on high performance wide body aircraft, which for me was particularly surprising.
No, that I have seen.
And I would trust an Airbus to do it. I would not trust a Chinese plane to do it. That landing, forget about it. Not on a bloody Chinese plane, no.
No, I had one experience, Southwestern China Airlines, and that experience was the door was not closing at LA, and that was a given I was frightened when that the door was not closing of an Airbus A380, which is a very large plane.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well,
okay,
blame the French for that.
thank you so much, Abhijit, and I hope I asked everybody's questions because today the discussion went totally disconnected because I was just trying to sequence the questions which are coming here. Abhijit, one last point, if you want to say something, that the will American forces retreat from Afghanistan will be considered irresponsible or responsible?
See, the retreat itself wasn't irresponsible. Ultimately, America's commitment is to its own people. That's fine. But America never corrected the mistakes it made. Okay. First mistake was thinking that it would convert a violent, sedentary, pastoralist society into a modern democracy. Stupidity number one. Stupidity number two was trusting Pakistan. Stupidity number three was trusting the Taliban. Uh, so the Americans have been very stupid. The problem is they're not fixing their own stupidity. They are not applying pressure on Pakistan to stop what it's doing, aiding, abetting, and effectively directing. What we're seeing isn't a Taliban attack on Kabul, on Mazari Sharif and other cities. It's in fact a Pakistani invasion of Afghanistan that you're seeing. And the Americans are putting no diplomatic pressure whatsoever to stop it, number one. They are helping by carrying out some token bombing here or there. But, the worst thing is that they actually didn't pay the contractors that they had set to maintain the Afghan Air Force's planes. So the Afghan Air Force isn't even able to use its own planes to its maximum effect and things like that. So there have been a lot of things where they've actually done things that are just plain wrong. Um, Backstabbing in some cases, mistakes in some cases, incompetence in some cases. I think for the backstabbing, shame on you. For the incompetence, well, given that Washington is a bit of a circle jerk bukake porn movie, I expect nothing better. Incompetence is, it's all about back scratching and saying, oh, this guy is a great analyst. This guy is a great analyst. They're all shit. But their reputation is built calling, backslapping each other and calling each other a legend and great and all that crap. So, you get ultimately what you deserve for the quality of expertise that you have.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. It's always a pleasure. And for viewers, I tell you one thing: Abhijit is a very good friend of mine, and that's why we always discuss openly. And you may find him all over the internet, but he takes out his valuable time and shares with me on the basis of friendship. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. We'll wait for that.